I recognized it instantly. The delicate silver chain with its distinctive oval pendant, engraved with the constellation of Cassiopeia, the bracelet I had custom-made for Marcus for our second anniversary. The bracelet that had taken 3 months of saving from my teaching assistant's stipend. The bracelet that was supposed to be uniquely his. Yet there it was, catching the light as she gestured animatedly to the bartender, the sleeve of her cream blouse slipping just enough to reveal it on her slender wrist. I froze mid-step, my cocktail glass nearly slipping from my fingers. The ambient chatter of the upscale Manhattan bar faded to white noise. Everything narrowed to that glint of silver, to the impossible reality of what I was seeing. "Nora? You okay?" Jessie touched my elbow, her voice coming from somewhere distant despite standing right beside me. I couldn't answer, couldn't take my eyes off the woman. She was beautiful in that effortless way that spoke of good genes and better skincare, all glossy dark hair and confident posture. She laughed at something her friend said, and the sound cut through the fog of my shock like a blade. "I need to go," I managed, setting my barely touched mojito on a nearby high top. "What? We just got here. Connor's on his way, and that woman at the bar," I interrupted, my voice unnaturally calm. "She's wearing Marcus's bracelet." Jessie's eyes widened, darting between me and the stranger. "Are you sure? Maybe it just looks similar. I designed it myself," I said, the words tasting bitter. "I'd know it anywhere." The woman stood, gathering her purse, a small Prada clutch that probably cost more than my rent, and headed toward the restrooms. Without conscious decision, I followed, barely registering Jessie's worried protest behind me. The restroom was all gleaming marble and subtle lighting, empty except for us. She stood at the sink, reapplying her lipstick, a perfect shade of red that somehow made her look both sophisticated and approachable. Our eyes met in the mirror. "Excuse me," I said, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Your bracelet, where did you get it?" She glanced down at her wrist, then back at me with a polite smile. "Oh, it was a gift. From whom?" The question came out sharper than I intended. Her smile faltered slightly, confusion creasing her brow. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" "No," I said. "But I know that bracelet. I had it custom made." Something shifted in her expression, a flicker of realization, followed by something like pity. She capped her lipstick, turning to face me directly. "You're Nora." "Not a question." My stomach dropped. "How do you know my name?" She hesitated, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear with manicured fingers. "Marcus has mentioned you." The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. "Marcus gave you that bracelet. Look, I didn't know it was—" She trailed off, looking genuinely uncomfortable now. "He said it was just something he had lying around?" A laugh escaped me, hollow and harsh. "Lying around, right." She studied my face for a long moment. "You didn't know about me, did you?" I couldn't answer, couldn't breathe past the vice squeezing my chest. 8 months we'd been together. 8 months of weekend trips and late-night conversations about the future. 8 months of me thinking I'd finally found something real. "I'm sorry," she said, and she actually sounded sincere. "For what it's worth, I didn't know about you either. Not until recently, when I managed, a couple weeks ago, I saw a text on his phone." She leaned back against the counter, her shoulders sagging slightly. "He said you were just a friend. That it was complicated, but he was ending things." The irony was almost funny. Almost. "He told me he was in Seattle this weekend. Business trip. We're staying at his place in Tribeca." She winced as soon as the words left her mouth. His place in Tribeca. The luxury condo he'd mentioned was an investment property, rented out for extra income. The place I'd never seen because the tenants are so difficult about showings. "How long?" I asked, not sure I wanted the answer. 4 months. She looked down at the bracelet. "I should have known when he wouldn't tell me where he got this. It's too personal to be just random. 4 months, half our relationship, overlapping with whatever this woman had with him. "I'm Vivienne," she offered, as if we were being introduced at a dinner party. "Vivienne," I repeated numbly. Even her name was elegant. "Do you love him?" The question surprised us both. She blinked, then gave a small, sad smile. I thought I did. Now I don't know what to think. She twisted the bracelet on her wrist. He's supposed to meet me here in an hour. We could wait for him together if you want. The idea of confronting Marcus here, in this polished bar with Vivienne at my side, sent a wave of nausea through me. It was too public, too performative, and some small, shameful part of me didn't want to see them together, didn't want to witness whatever chemistry existed between them. No, I said, straightening my shoulders. But I'd like that bracelet back. Her eyebrows rose. Excuse me? It was never his to give. My voice steadied. And I'd rather not leave something that personal with a stranger. For a moment, I thought she might refuse. Then, with a single fluid motion, she unclasped the bracelet and held it out to me. You know what? You're right. I don't want anything from him anyway. She dropped it into my palm, her fingertips briefly touching mine. What will you do now? I closed my fingers around the silver, feeling the familiar weight of it. I don't know yet, but it won't involve him. She nodded, understanding passing between us. A strange solidarity and shared betrayal. Good luck, Nora. I left without looking back, the bracelet clutched in my fist like a talisman. Jessie was waiting anxiously by the door, her face a picture of concern. What happened? Did you talk to her? Was it really... Let's go. I cut her off, pushing past toward the exit. I need to pack my things. Wait, what? Nora, talk to me. But I couldn't speak, couldn't explain. All I could think was that in 3 hours, Marcus would be home from his business trip, expecting to find everything as he'd left it. Instead, he would find nothing of mine at all. 6 months earlier, I had been drowning. Not literally, though some days, that might have been easier. I was drowning in grief, in the aftermath of my father's sudden death, in the mountain of medical bills and funeral expenses that had wiped out my savings. I was drowning in the final stages of a PhD dissertation that felt increasingly pointless, in the soul-crushing job market that awaited me after. Then Marcus Harrington walked into the university library where I worked part-time, looking for resources on architectural history for a restoration project his firm had taken on. He was everything I wasn't in that moment. Composed, confident, successful. He wore tailored suits and spoke with the easy authority of someone who had never questioned his place in the world. I helped him find what he needed, expecting that to be the end of it. Instead, he came back the next day with coffee. A thank you for your help yesterday, and questions about my research. He listened with genuine interest as I explained my work on gender dynamics in contemporary literature, never once making me feel like it was impractical or insignificant the way so many others had. By our 3rd meeting, it no longer felt coincidental. By the 5th, when he asked me to dinner, it felt inevitable. You're different, he told me on our first official date, at a restaurant far nicer than I could afford. Most people I meet want something from me. You just see me. I didn't tell him that was because I hardly saw myself anymore, that I'd been a ghost moving through my own life since my father's death. I didn't tell him that his attention felt like being brought back into focus, like remembering I was solid after months of feeling transparent. Instead, I let myself be swept up in him, in us. Marcus was 38 to my 29, established in his career as an architect while I was still struggling to find my footing. He lived in a world of client meetings and industry events, of summer homes and investment portfolios. My world was cramped apartments with roommates and calculating if I could afford both groceries and an oil change in the same week. But he never made me feel less for it. If anything, he seemed to admire my academic dedication, my willingness to pursue knowledge for its own sake rather than financial reward. You have integrity, he said once, tracing patterns on my bare shoulder as we lay in his bed. You know who you are. The irony of that statement hit me now as I methodically packed my belongings from his Upper East Side apartment. A few books, clothes, toiletries. It was alarming how little of myself I'd actually brought into his space. As if some part of me had always known this was temporary. My phone buzzed repeatedly with texts from Marcus on my way back. Flight landed early. Can't wait to see you. Bringing dinner from that Italian place you love. Did you finish your chapter? We should celebrate tonight. I left them unanswered, working faster. Jesse sat on the edge of his pristine sofa, watching me with worried eyes. Are you sure about this? Maybe you should hear his side before... There is no side that explains giving my anniversary gift to another woman, I said, zipping my suitcase with finality. Or lying about where he is, or having another relationship for 4 months. I know. It's inexcusable, but... She hesitated. But what? It's just... You were so happy, Nora. The happiest I've seen you since your dad died. Maybe there's something worth salvaging here. I stopped, turning to look at her directly. Would you say that if it were your boyfriend? If Connor was seeing someone else behind your back? She flinched. Of course not. Then don't say it to me. I softened my tone at her hurt expression. I appreciate that you care, but I can't stay with someone I can't trust. And I won't be the woman who accepts less than she deserves because she's afraid of being alone again. The truth was, I was terrified. Marcus had become my safety net, my stability in a world that had proven itself unreliable. Without him, I was back to facing everything on my own. The crushing student debt, the uncertain future, the lingering grief. But as I looked around his apartment, at the expensive furniture and curated art pieces that had never fully felt like home, I realized something important. I'd survived before him. I'd been wounded and broke and lost, but I'd kept going. I didn't need him to save me. I'd been saving myself all along. I slipped the bracelet into my pocket, its weight a reminder of my own worth. The constellation of Cassiopeia, a queen in Greek mythology, proud and beautiful. I'd chosen it because Marcus once said I reminded him of the night sky, deep and full of wonder. Now I wondered if he'd said similar things to Vivienne, what constellation he might have associated with her. He'll be here soon, Jessie said quietly, checking her watch. Do you want to leave a note or anything? I considered it. There were so many things I could say, accusations and questions that burned in my throat. But in the end, what was the point? Nothing he could say would undo the betrayal. No, I decided. No note. Just as we were heading for the door, my phone rang. Not Marcus, a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, but some instinct made me answer. Is this Nora Whitman? A woman's voice, unfamiliar. Yes, who's this? This is Claire Reed. I'm calling about the Westside Writers Residency program. I know this is short notice, but we had a last-minute opening and your application was next on our list. The position starts next week, 6 months in the residency apartment, stipend included. Are you still interested? I froze, my free hand gripping the door handle. The Westside program. I'd applied months ago before meeting Marcus, when I was desperate for housing I could afford while finishing my dissertation. It was highly competitive, offering emerging writers a place to live and work without financial pressure. I'd given up hope of hearing back. Ms. Whitman? Are you there? Yes, I said, finding my voice. Yes, I'm definitely still interested. Wonderful. I'll email you the details. We'll need your answer by tomorrow morning. You'll have it, I promised, ending the call with shaking fingers. Jessie stared at me. What was that? A sign, I said, a strange lightness spreading through my chest. Or just really good timing. Either way, I'm taking it. As we stepped into the hallway, the elevator dinged at the end of the corridor. I caught a glimpse of Marcus stepping out, his tall figure unmistakable even from a distance. He looked up, saw me with my suitcase, confusion crossing his handsome face. Nora? What's going on? I turned away, heading for the stairwell instead. Back door, I murmured to Jessie. Nora, Marcus called again, his footsteps quickening behind us, but I didn't look back. Some endings don't need confrontation or explanation. Some betrayals speak for themselves, and some new beginnings are waiting just around the corner, if you're brave enough to walk toward them. The Westside Writers Residency was housed in a converted brownstone in a quieter part of Brooklyn. My apartment was on the second floor, a modest one-bedroom with tall windows and built-in bookshelves, plainly furnished but clean and functional. After Marcus's sleek, impersonal condo, it felt refreshingly unpretentious. The first night, I sat cross-legged on the floor of the empty living room, surrounded by my few possessions, and cried until my body ached with it. Not just for Marcus and the future I'd thought we were building, but for everything. My father, my struggles, the version of myself I'd lost along the way. It was grief without an audience, raw and necessary. Then I washed my face, unpacked my books, and got to work. The residency came with obligations, community workshops twice a month, progress reports on my writing, occasional public readings. But it also came with freedom. For the first time in years, I didn't have to worry about rent or pick up extra shifts at the library. I could focus entirely on finishing my dissertation and figuring out what came next. Marcus called 37 times in the first week. His voicemails evolved from confusion to anger to pleading. "Just talk to me, Nora. Let me explain." "This is ridiculous. You can't just disappear without a word. Please, baby. Whatever you think happened, it's not what you think. I love you." "Only you?" I listened to each one, then deleted them all. He sent flowers to the English department office, arrangements so lavish they embarrassed me in front of my colleagues. I donated them to a nearby nursing home. 3 weeks after I left, he somehow found my new address. I came home to find him sitting on the stoop, his normally perfect appearance slightly disheveled, dark circles under his eyes. 5 minutes, he said, standing as I approached. That's all I'm asking. Part of me wanted to walk past him, to maintain the clean break I'd made. But another part needed closure, needed to hear whatever lie he'd crafted to explain the unexplainable. 5 minutes, I agreed, not inviting him inside. We stood on the sidewalk like strangers. "What you think you saw, it wasn't what you think," he began. I almost laughed. "I saw my anniversary gift on another woman's wrist. What exactly do you think I think?" He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I'd once found endearing. "Vivienne she's complicated. We have history. I was going to tell you about her." "When? Before or after your trip to Seattle that was actually a weekend with her in Tribeca?" He flinched. "You talked to her?" "Yes. She was more honest with me in 5 minutes than you've been in 8 months. It wasn't serious with her," he insisted. "It was just familiar, easy. But what we have, Nora, that's real." "That's special." "Had," I corrected. "What we had. Have," he countered, stepping closer. "I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. But don't throw away everything we've built over one lapse in judgment." I studied him, this man I'd thought I knew so well. He was still handsome, still charismatic. But I could see now what I'd missed before. The calculated sincerity in his expression, the practiced way he held himself in contrition. It wasn't a lapse in judgment, Marcus. It was a deliberate choice you made every day for 4 months. I pulled the bracelet from my pocket, holding it up between us. And this? Giving her something that meant so much to us? That wasn't a mistake. That was cruel. He stared at the bracelet, genuine shame crossing his features. "I never meant for you to know about that. It was stupid. She saw it in my drawer and liked it, and I didn't want to explain why I couldn't give it to her. Because that would require admitting I existed?" I shook my head, pocketing the bracelet again. "Your 5 minutes are up." "Nora, please." "No. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave. You're not going to call me again or send flowers or show up here. If we run into each other professionally, we'll be civil. But that's it." "You can't just decide that unilaterally," he said, a harder edge entering his voice. "Actually, I can. That's what happens when you lie to someone for months. They stop caring what you want." I turned toward my building, then paused, looking back at him. "By the way, I met your wife last week." The color drained from his face. "What? Catherine, right?" "She came to a reading I gave at the university library. Apparently she's friends with the head librarian. Small world. It was a bluff. But the flash of panic in his eyes confirmed what I'd suspected after finding a woman's name on old property records when I'd looked up his Tribeca apartment out of curiosity. Nora. Goodbye, Marcus. This time when I walked away, he didn't follow. The next few months passed in a blur of writing and teaching and slowly rebuilding. I finished my dissertation, successfully defended it, and officially became Dr. Whitman, an achievement that felt both anticlimactic and profound. I reconnected with friends I'd neglected, started therapy to process my father's death properly, applied for teaching positions at several universities. I wore the constellation bracelet sometimes, reclaiming it as my own symbol rather than a reminder of betrayal. On difficult days, it reminded me of my resilience, of the queen who placed herself among the stars. Summer turned to fall, bringing with it new routines and new possibilities. I was sitting in a coffee shop near the residency grading student papers when someone approached my table. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" I looked up to find a woman with familiar dark hair and elegant posture, Vivienne. For a moment, I thought I was imagining things. But no, it was definitely her, though she looked different in casual clothes, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said when I didn't immediately respond. "I recognized you and, honestly, I've been working up the courage to come over for the past 20 minutes. "It's fine," I said, gesturing to the empty chair across from me. "Sit." She did, setting down her cup with careful movements. "I wasn't sure you'd want to see me." "I'm not sure either," I admitted. "But here we are." A small smile touched her lips. "Here we are." We sat in awkward silence for a moment, the noise of the cafe filling the space between us. "How did you find me?" I finally asked. I didn't, actually. "I live in the neighborhood, moved here last month. This is just coincidence." She paused. "Or fate, depending on how you look at it." I raised an eyebrow. "You believe in fate?" "More than I used to." She wrapped her hands around her cup. "I wanted to thank you." "For what?" "For that day in the bathroom, for, I don't know, waking me up, I guess." She met my eyes directly. "After you left, I waited for Marcus. When he arrived, I confronted him. It wasn't pretty, I could imagine." "He has a wife," I said, not a question. She nodded. 15 years. Living in Boston with their 2 children while he builds the business in New York. He told me they were separated. They weren't. Her laugh was brittle. God, I was such a cliché. The other woman who thinks she's special. "We both were," I said quietly. "He's very good at making people feel special." "Yes, he is." She tilted her head, studying me. "You're wearing the bracelet." I glanced down at my wrist, where the silver chain caught the light. "It's mine. It always was. It suits you." She hesitated. "I'm sorry, by the way, for being part of something that hurt you, even unknowingly." The apology surprised me. Its sincerity, its lack of excuses. "Thank you. That means something." Another silence, less awkward than before. "I'm starting over," she said suddenly. "New apartment, new job. I was an interior designer at Marcus's firm, but that wasn't exactly tenable after everything. Now I'm freelancing, building my own client list." "That's brave," I said, meaning it. "Necessary, more like." She smiled ruefully. "What about you? Are you doing okay?" The question was simple, but it made my throat tighten unexpectedly. Few people had asked me that directly since everything happened. "I'm getting there," I answered honestly. "Some days are better than others." She nodded in understanding. "I should let you get back to your work." She stood, then hesitated. "This might be strange, but would you want to get coffee sometime? Intentionally, I mean, not just running into each other." My instinct was to refuse. What possible basis did we have for friendship? But looking at her now, I saw not just the woman who had unwittingly shared my boyfriend, but someone who had been deceived just as thoroughly, who was rebuilding just as I was. "Actually," I said, "I'd like that." She smiled. A real one this time, reaching her eyes. "Great. I'm in here most mornings before work. I'll see you around." Then, "See you around, Nora." As she walked away, I felt something unexpected. Not closure exactly, but a sense of possibility. The story I'd been telling myself, of betrayal and loss and starting over, was shifting, expanding to include new characters and unexpected turns. Winter in New York has a way of stripping everything down to essentials. Trees bare against gray skies, people hurrying from one warm place to another, the city's bones visible beneath its usual adornments. By December, I'd settled into a rhythm at the residency, writing in the mornings, teaching afternoon classes at the university where I'd been hired as an adjunct, occasional evenings with friends or my growing circle of fellow writers, and, increasingly, with Vivienne. Our coffee meetup had turned into weekly brunches, then museum visits, then cooking dinners together in my small residency kitchen. It was the strangest friendship I'd ever formed, born from mutual betrayal, but growing into something genuine and unexpected. "You know people think we're crazy, right?" she said one evening as we sat on my floor sharing takeout and a bottle of wine. A documentary about mid-century architects paused on my laptop. "Being friends with your ex's other woman is not exactly conventional." When have I ever been conventional? I laughed, refilling our glasses. "Besides, you weren't the one who owed me loyalty." "He was," she nodded, thoughtful. "Still, it's weird on paper." "Everything's weird on paper. That's why I prefer telling stories in person." The wine had made me philosophical, loosening the careful boundaries I usually maintained. Vivienne leaned back against the couch, studying me with those perceptive eyes. "You're different than I expected," she said. "How so?" "That day in the bar bathroom, you seemed so composed, so certain. I thought you were one of those people who always knows exactly what they want and how to get it." I laughed outright at that. God, no. I was in shock. And I've been stumbling through most of my adult life, just trying to figure things out as I go. Could have fooled me. She took a sip of wine. "When Marcus talked about you, the few times he did, he made you sound almost intimidatingly brilliant. This serious academic he could never quite reach. The mention of Marcus still stung, but less sharply now." "And when he talked about you?" She hesitated. "He didn't really. Not to you?" I shook my head. "Well, when he talked about his wife to me, he made her sound cold, distant, only interested in status and appearances." She traced the rim of her glass. "I wonder if she's actually lovely." "Probably," I said. "Or maybe not. Maybe the only fiction was the version of himself he created for each of us. The perfect boyfriend. The misunderstood husband. The supportive mentor." Vivienne counted off on her fingers, all very convincing while they lasted. We fell silent, the weight of our shared history settling between us. "I sent her a letter," Vivienne said abruptly. "Catherine, his wife." My eyes widened. "You what? When?" "Last month." I'd been thinking about it for weeks, going back and forth. But in the end, I felt like she deserved to know. She met my gaze steadily. "You deserve to know about me." "She deserved to know about us both." "What did you tell her?" "Everything. About my relationship with him, about finding out about you, about the likelihood there were others we didn't know about." She twisted a strand of hair around her finger, a nervous gesture I'd come to recognize. I sent her copies of texts, dates, photos, things she could use if she wanted to. If she wanted to what? Leave him? Or stay with full knowledge of who he really is? Or negotiate better terms? Whatever she needed. Vivienne shrugged. "It wasn't about punishing him exactly. It was about the truth." I thought about that, about truth as its own end, not as a weapon or a means to something else. About how much power there was in simply knowing. Has she responded? No, and she might not. "That's okay," she smiled slightly. It wasn't about getting a response. It was about being able to look at myself in the mirror again. I understood that feeling, the gradual reclaiming of self-respect, piece by fragmented piece. In the months since leaving Marcus, I'd been doing the same in my own way. "I got offered a tenure-track position," I said, changing the subject. "At Barnard?" Vivienne's face lit up. "Nora, that's incredible. When did you find out?" "Yesterday. I haven't told anyone yet." I hadn't planned to tell her first, but somehow it felt right. "It starts next fall. We have to celebrate." "This is huge!" She scrambled to her feet, nearly knocking over the wine bottle. "Wait, do you have anything champagne adjacent in this place?" I laughed, watching her rummage through my sparse kitchen cabinets with the familiar ease of someone who had been there many times before. It struck me then how much had changed since that moment in the bar bathroom, how the worst betrayal of my life had somehow led me here, to this unlikely friendship and unexpected joy. No champagne, but there's that fancy hot chocolate your client gave you, I called to her. The one with the gold flakes? Perfect. She returned with 2 mugs, her expression turning serious despite her excitement. You know what this means, right? You did it. Everything you've been working for, through all the shit and hardship. You did it anyway. Something about her fierce pride in me, this woman who had every reason to be a footnote in my story of heartbreak, but had somehow become a central character in my story of renewal, brought unexpected tears to my eyes. We did it, I corrected, raising my mug to hers. New beginnings. She clinked her mug against mine. New beginnings. Spring came to Brooklyn in fits and starts. Warm days followed by sudden frosts, stubborn flowers pushing through concrete despite the confusion. My time at the residency was winding down, each day bringing me closer to the next chapter. I was packing up my office at the university when my phone buzzed with a text from Vivienne. Check your email right now. Curious, I opened my inbox to find a message from an unfamiliar address. C. Harrington Boston Development. Catherine Harrington. My heart skipped. Dr. Whitman, you don't know me, but I believe we have someone in common. Vivienne Reed shared your name in her letter to me last December, and I've since followed your academic work online with interest. I'm writing because my company is establishing a scholarship fund for women in higher education who have faced significant personal challenges while pursuing their degrees. The first recipient will be selected this fall. We've chosen to name it the Cassiopeia Scholarship, which I understand will have meaning for you. If you would be willing, I'd like to invite you to serve on the selection committee. Your perspective would be invaluable. Regardless of your decision, I want to thank you for your dignity, for your strength, for the example you've set without ever intending to. Sometimes the most powerful lessons come from strangers. Sincerely, Catherine Harrington, CEO, Boston Development Group. I read the email 3 times, my hands shaking slightly. Then I called Vivienne. Did you know about this? I asked when she answered. She called me yesterday. Vivienne sounded breathless with excitement. Nora, do you realize what this means? She left him. She left him and took the company. How do you know? She told me. We talked for an hour. She said my letter was the final piece she needed. She'd suspected for years, but never had enough proof. She's been planning her exit all this time, documenting everything, building her case. Vivienne's voice softened. She thanked me, Nora. Can you believe that? And she asked about you. She was so impressed by everything you've accomplished. I sat down heavily in my office chair, overwhelmed. The Cassiopeia Scholarship? I might have mentioned the bracelet in my letter, Vivienne admitted. The constellation, what it represented. She loved the symbolism, a queen who placed herself among the stars. The same words I'd thought myself months ago. A circle completing itself. Are you going to do it? Be on the committee? Vivienne asked. I looked around my small office, at the boxes waiting to be moved to my new position at Barnard, at the dissertation that had become a book contract, at the life I'd rebuilt from fragments. Yes, I said. I think I am. 1 year later, the ceremony was small but elegant, held in the garden courtyard of the Women's Center downtown. Spring sunshine filtered through new leaves, casting dappled shadows across the assembled guests. At the podium, Catherine Harrington, tall and poised in a navy suit, presented the first Cassiopeia Scholarship to a young doctoral candidate whose research focused on resilience in the face of trauma. I sat in the front row beside Vivienne, watching the recipient's face as she accepted the award. Her disbelief, her gratitude, her fierce determination. I recognized those emotions intimately. Congratulations to our inaugural scholar, Catherine concluded, her voice warm. And thank you to our selection committee, particularly Dr. Nora Whitman, whose insight was instrumental in our decision. Polite applause as I nodded in acknowledgement, catching Catherine's eye. Over the past year, our professional relationship had evolved into a tentative friendship, built on mutual respect and the unspoken understanding of what we had in common. After the ceremony, as guests mingled over champagne and canapés, I found myself standing with both women near the garden's small fountain. The three of us together, an unlikely trio bound by one man's dishonesty and our own refusal to be defined by it. "Two new traditions," Catherine said, raising her glass in a toast. "And second chances," added Vivienne. "And unexpected connections," I finished. As we clinked glasses, I noticed the bracelet on my wrist, the constellation of Cassiopeia catching the light. I'd had it redesigned, the original pendant now flanked by 3 small stars in a new configuration. "I've been meaning to ask," Catherine said, nodding toward it. "Vivienne mentioned the significance, but I'm curious about your new design." I touched the bracelet, feeling its familiar weight. The original was just the constellation. I added 3 stars, one for each of us. Vivienne's eyes widened slightly. "Nora, too sentimental?" I asked with a small smile. "No," Catherine said quietly. "It's perfect." As they admired the bracelet, I caught sight of a familiar figure at the edge of the gathering, Marcus, standing awkwardly by the entrance. He looked different, older somehow, less certain in his expensive suit. Our eyes met across the courtyard, and for a moment I was transported back to that day in the bar, to the shock of recognition and betrayal. But the pain didn't come. Instead, I felt a strange sense of gratitude, not for what he'd done, but for who I'd become because of it. For the women beside me, for the strength I'd found, for the life I might never have built if everything had gone according to plan. Catherine followed my gaze, her expression cooling as she spotted her ex-husband. I should have known he'd show up. He's been trying to negotiate his way back into the company for months. "Do you want me to have security escort him out?" Vivienne offered. "I know people." Catherine considered it, then shook her head. "No, let him see this. Let him see us." She straightened her shoulders. "Every inch the CEO. Besides, he legally can't come within 50 feet of me, so he'll be removing himself shortly." I laughed despite myself, a genuine burst of amusement that felt like release. Marcus, seeing the 3 of us together, laughing, united, turned and walked away, disappearing back through the garden gate. "Well, that was anticlimactic," Vivienne remarked. "The best endings often are," I said. "It's the beginning that follows that matters." Later, as the event wound down, I found myself alone by the fountain, enjoying a moment of quiet reflection. The past year had been transformative. My new position at Barnard, my book forthcoming from the university press, my life expanding in ways I couldn't have imagined when I stood in that Manhattan bar bathroom, confronting the evidence of betrayal. "Professor Whitman?" I turned to find the scholarship recipient standing nervously nearby, clutching her award certificate. "Congratulations again," I said warmly. "Your work is exceptional." "Thank you," she hesitated. I wanted to ask, the scholarship name, Cassiopeia. Is there a story behind it? I touched the bracelet on my wrist, considering my answer. I could tell her the simple version, the Greek queen placed among the stars as punishment for her pride. Or I could tell her a different story, one about a silver bracelet and 3 women who reclaimed their own narratives. "It's about recognition," I said finally. "About seeing yourself clearly, even when others don't. And about finding your place in a constellation you never expected to be part of." She nodded, seemingly satisfied with the explanation. "That's beautiful. Thank you for everything." As she walked away, I caught sight of Vivienne and Catherine by the gate, waiting for me. My unlikely friends. My unexpected constellation, I joined them, stepping out of the garden and into the spring afternoon, the silver bracelet catching the light as I moved, a reminder not of what I'd lost, but of everything I'd found instead.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.